did we make the right decision? Like, was this the right market to enter into?
I was banging on your door for ages to get into sales.
But my first month, I'd sold more cars than anyone else that month as well.
I get a call. And just to let you know, there's a very high risk that all 40 cars that you have are about to get flooded.
The Prime Minister has described it as one of the worst natural disasters ever to hit the country.
How to start a supercar showroom.
If, say, for example, someone came in and asked for a specific car, and the second they said, oh, I'm thinking about exporting the car, we would have to completely stop the conversation.
I want to perfect the art of taking supercar pictures.
My first sale, it was, she was actually a soap actress.
I had some crazy experiences there though. It wasn't all fun and games.
Shit's okay to say.
Shit. Oh, thanks. We just had a few seconds of shits.
Sounds bad. Auto Trader was literally my most visited website. I won't say what my other one was.
Second most.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the GVE podcast. Today is episode 5 and we are going to be discussing how to start a supercar showroom. So I've got Andreas, George and Anthony with us today and it should be a good one today, right?
Yeah, no, I think everyone always asks, whenever you go on social media, the number one question is, how do you get into supercar sales? How do you buy and sell cars? I mean, we've seen it where people are working at average sports car sales where you're selling 50 to 60 grand motors and the next thing they say is, I really want to get into the epitome of car sales, luxury cars, supercars. What advice can you give? But I think you said it before, everyone sees the glitz and the glam, but there's so much more that goes on behind closed doors.
It's not an easy industry to be in, to say the least, you know. Look, I'm not taking it away from anybody that sells a 30 grand Beamer or a Merc. I'd say there's a lot of effort that goes into that. But the customers that we're dealing with every single day, you bringing in the cars and you guys selling the cars and whatnot, we're dealing with something that costs as much as a house, right?
Or more sometimes.
And so we have to give them that service. We have to make sure that the car's right. It's not easy, is it?
No.
It's not easy, but it's the most rewarding and interesting industry to be in, I think, at the moment. It's just every day is different. There's not a dull day in this industry at all. So
100%. Okay, so let's go back to how it all started for GVE. Yeah, and I'm not going to go too much into this because I've just finished an episode with CEO Cast and Raheem, where I delve into it a little bit more. But what I'll do is I'll briefly go over it on how GVE started and then how the first supercar showroom for GVE started as well. Yeah, so GVE started in 2009. GVE stands for Global Vehicle Exports, as you guys know. I decided to leave my job as an accountant and I decided to set up a website that would show that GVE exports cars from the UK to the Far East, right? And so it was Bangkok that I was trying to concentrate on the most, Bangkok and Singapore. Managed to get one client in Bangkok to trust me enough to send me 75 grand up front. And I bought a Porsche Cayenne from Sutton Coldfield. Oh, wow. Probably won't like the fact that I'm saying it now, right? Yeah. But from Sutton Coldfield Porsche.
What's the name of the sales guy?
Joe Blogs. Have you heard of it? Okay, no. So this guy in Thailand bites when I'm saying like I'm the best thing you've ever heard of, right? And he's like, okay, fine. If you're that good, then get me this Porsche Cayenne. And nobody could get them at that time, right?
It was a Cayenne?
Yeah.
Really?
When they came out, they were popular as anything.
Wow,
right?
okay.
And so I said, okay, I'll buy it. And but I don't know you too well, mate. I'm really big in the UK, but I don't know you too well, so you're going to have to send me the money first. So he sent me the money. And I drove down to Porsche the next day, paid for the car, drove it down to the airport, put it on the plane, and that was the start of GVE. That one car was the start of GVE. Now,
how much was air freight back then?
Oh my god! Actually, it was a fraction of what it is now. It would have probably been say about 5 grand.
No.
Same company that
For air freight.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But
How much
was it a good deal? Your first deal?
man, it was an amazing deal, right?
Yeah.
But now, just imagine I was in my bedroom doing this whole thing from there, and my overheads were zero.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
I had no employees. Not that I have anything against you guys, but whatever. But I had no expenses to worry about. Right. So obviously it was an amazing deal. That deal then led to many more in Thailand. I was going there every month. I was going there every 6 to 8 weeks. I had some crazy experiences there, though. It wasn't all fun and games. Like, one of the worst experiences that I've ever had was once a business started doing a lot of cars every month, right? Then I got 2 employees to work with me. But suddenly there was these floods in Bangkok. And I get a call from basically what I was doing.
Different time to the tsunami.
Yeah. Oh, man. This was much after that. But what was happening was there was such a big demand from the Far East market that if they turned around and said, I need 10 E-classes today, it was so hard to suddenly get them their 10 E-classes right here and right now. So instead of trying to be reactive, I was trying to preempt what the market would do in a month. And it was quite easy to work it out at that point that, hey, look, E-Class is the latest Merc that they've just released. Let's order 10 of them, right?
Right.
So I'd order 10.
How would they allow you to order 10?
Oh, mate. Well, this is the problem, right? That you have to think outside the box. And it's not as easy as just like, hi, Mr. Merc dealer. I'm calling from GVE. I'm going to send all of your cars abroad. Can you give me 10 E-classes?
Yeah.
Because
They'll get flags, warning flags straight away.
Exactly. But you know what happened on my first ever Merc that I bought? I bought an E-Class just like that. And then I took it down to the port, sold it. And then I get a call literally 4 days later. Hi, Mr. Rai, just so you know, you've been blacklisted from Mercedes and you can never buy a Mercedes again. Even till today, 14 years later, I can't walk into a Merc dealer. They probably got a picture of me behind their desk, right? But anyway, so just to make sure that I could get more sales on the export side, instead of being reactive, I was preempting what they wanted. So I'm getting 10 E-classes and then I'm sticking it on a boat. And so here's the other thing. Initially, I would get 10 E-classes and leave them hand and start trying to sell them on the phone, right? And then I was like, 1 second, if I send them there and I store them there, I can probably make more money. Because if you're a dealer out there and suddenly a car, rather than having to wait 4 weeks and you can get it in 1 day, you're going to pay me that premium, right? Well, I had at one point 40 cars sat
out there
in the port, and I get a call from the shipper in Thailand saying, shipping agent saying, I don't know if you're watching the news, but if you switch it on, and I did, there's massive floods in Thailand. And there's these, you know, like how you get that filter that everybody's using at the moment.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Saw that at Goodwood before. Bloody hell.
So that filter where it looks like your garage has been flooded and the water's up down to here, right? I was actually getting the real stuff before filters were even invented, right? Sent to me of like these Ferraris underwater and this, that, and the other. Anyway, so I'm like, well, that's central Bangkok. And these cars are being stored all the way in a place called Lam Shabang. There's no way that it's going. I get a call. Just to let you know, there's a very high risk that all 40 cars that you have are about to get flooded.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to, I'm calling all my contacts in Bangkok, and they're like, listen, we're not even in Bangkok anymore because we've left to go to our holiday homes because we don't want to be there while it's getting flooded. And just by the grace of God, I guess, the cars got spared.
Oh, really?
Had that happened, that would have been, I don't think there'd be GVE today.
So the floods didn't affect them?
It didn't get as far as the port, thank God. Right?
I always thought you sold them.
No, in the end we sold them as well. But, like I'm just kind of saying like, that was the start of the export game, but it goes to show how hard it can be as well, right? And like, let's say, for example, there's another major thing that I was doing, like, the same thing that I was doing, which was buying a whole load of Mercs. And then overnight, Merc decided to release a facelift of the E-Class where the bottom fog light was no longer straight, and it was the other way around, but it was a hockey stick before, and now it was straight, right? In the Far East, it's all about keeping up with the Joneses. So if you've got the hockey stick and the new one, it's a straight light, mate, your life isn't worth living, right? So suddenly your cars that you were about to make $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 out of, suddenly you're making a $6,000 loss out of because the lights changed and they don't want it anymore.
Wow.
Right. So there's two things where it was risky. And then I guess with Thailand, overnight, the government changed, and overnight all the cars that we had there had to be sent back because they weren't importing anymore. So that was export. And that was the day when the government got overthrown that I decided, okay, do you know what? Sod this. We need to have a presence here. We need to have a showroom here and be able to control the market and not be at the mercy of other territories, right? So then we open GVE Supercars, that division. And that was around 2012, 2013. And that's when Mr. George Gedu enters in on the scene.
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
I do actually. So it's quite a funny time. I remember I was at law school, and then while I was doing my finals, I see an advert come up on Facebook, and it's saying purchasing assistant required. And I thought, what? I love cars, always loved cars. And I saw the advert. I still remember to date, the picture that was used was the orange Aventador parked in front with, I think, a 650S parked on the side in the middle of the showroom, saying purchasing assistant required. And I remember looking back to it back then thinking, wow, dream job, what an amazing thing to do. I'd love to do something like this, but at the same time, my family were pushing me to go down, as Asian families tend to do, go down the whole educational route, become a lawyer and so on. So I was in my final year and started part-time. And I remember you being really scary when I came. He sat in the meeting.
Scary?
Yeah.
Are you joking?
He had this really condescending look, like he was just staring me down. No smile, nothing. Just okay.
Like he's had 40 Mercedes just float down
Exactly.
Thailand.
I remember when you came in, and I was like, Steph used to work with us then, right?
Yeah.
And I go to Steph, listen, I don't think we need an assistant. I just don't think we need one right now. And she's like, no, I think we do. Anyway, so you come in, and we're interviewing you, and you made me laugh. You said something, and
You definitely didn't laugh out loud.
No. You made me laugh about something, right? And it was just you. The thing is, the confidence, that spark of confidence, you've never lost that. And that was what you had back then. And it was amazing to see somebody young that hadn't really had because you were in education that whole time, you hadn't really had a proper career at that time, right? And so you've come in with all this confidence, and you come with your little briefcase as if you're about to go to court.
That was actually that was my laptop in my laptop bag at the time. You've got all my essays and stuff on. I don't know why I brought it.
Yeah.
I just thought it actually looks quite cool. I'm wearing a suit. Yeah, nice little Apple case. That would do quite nice.
Yeah. Well, no, I look, at the end of the day, that was probably the best decision I've ever made in this business, to take you on at that point, because as a purchasing assistant, we were trying to find our feet at that point. And we I didn't know how to deal in supercars. I thought, one of my friends in the export game said, listen, you think export's good? You should see how much money you can make out of dealing cars in the UK. So I was like, all right, fine. Well, let's do what he says then, right? And I thought, all that money that could have been used for export, let's just buy a bunch of supercars and I'll sell them. And I'll sell them every single month. And it'll be, flip them once a month, 12 times. You're making a shed load of money, right? I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, James. Yeah, I am. Okay, perfect.
Shit's not a swear word, is it?
Huh?
Shit's okay to say.
Shit. Oh, thanks. We just had a few seconds of shits.
Sounds like
That's all right, mate. Let them all know. It's fine.
I explain the context what that means.
Oh, what, Anthony this morning? Yeah. Talk about it after the podcast.
All right.
Thin walls.
So, and it wasn't that, right? Suddenly you've bought this Aventador and you think, oh my God, I've got like 25 grand in this. Isn't it great? And then 3 months later, you're still sitting on the damn Aventador and you're thinking,
I've got 5 grand left in it.
20 grand, yeah.
you need to drop it by 20 grand. Did we make the right decision? Like, was this the right market to enter into, right? It wasn't a simple case of open up a showroom, get all these supercars, advertise on Auto Trader. Well, one of the key things that I wanted to do when we first started this showroom was we have to have the best pictures, because all I kept on looking through Auto Trader was, like people were getting pictures taken so randomly. Major showrooms, their pictures were rubbish, right? So I was like, I want to perfect the art of taking supercar pictures, right? And so we had a guy come in, professional photographer, and he took those pictures, but still all of that didn't work.
Yeah.
Right?
That guy has a story behind him as well, doesn't he?
Oh God, how many stories?
The first photographer who decided that he wanted to become a car dealer himself.
Ah, okay, yeah, but we've got how many stories of like people do we have like that? Look, that's another topic altogether. But employees that come on board and then decide to defect. Do you see what I'm saying? That you're as loyal to them as you possibly can be, and then suddenly they decide, okay, well, actually, you know what? They look at what the showroom's doing, and then they're like, well, I should be able to do this, so I'll tell you what, I'll do it on the side.
Do you want to know what the funny thing is?
Go on.
He's still a photographer.
Oh, wow. Oh, thanks. Oh, dear. All right. Anyway.
So it's not that easy.
Yeah, it's not that easy, exactly, right? So, but going back to what we were saying, that it wasn't easy. It wasn't as easy as just putting supercars in the showroom and then they start selling. So where do you were purchasing assistant at that point. What was the hardest thing at the start with purchasing cars?
So it was a case of trying to convince people that we weren't time wasters. So you probably hear it now when you're calling people. It's so easy to speak to people. You say, calling from GVE London, and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of you guys. Okay, back then, it's like, I'm calling from GVE London. Who? What? Where? What London? So I was almost having to tell them, like, this is what the company does. This is who we are. I remember having to take videos of cars and actually doing an actual walk around to show them this is the showroom that we have.
Yeah.
Actually, bit of context behind this. So it's not the current showroom that we were in. It was another unit.
Yeah, the smaller one.
Yeah.
Like fits 10 cars in it or something.
Yeah, fits 10 cars, has the offices above. And yeah, I think you made this point at the beginning that you fake it till you make it. So almost make it out as though we are the best in the business. We buy the best cars, we sell the best cars, but then convince them that we are the people you should be selling to. So
at that point, we're not even talking sale or return at this point.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Only outright purchase.
And the people...
You were against sale or return. I remember that.
Really?
Yeah, you used to say, no, forget
Really?
that. It's a waste of time. Yeah, don't
Against
do
sale
that.
or
Doesn't
return?
sound like me, eh?
Really?
David used to walk around with his briefcase and his laptop and his card reader. Be like, yep. I won't say his name at the time, but he's a purchasing manager. Yeah, you go, you check it out and I'll make the payment. Like it used to be David's thing that he would make 2-3 payments a day buying cars.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was...
And then I'd probably... at the end of every week, like lose money on a car as well. Right?
No, I remember at the time we made good money, but when you think about it, the money you were making with the outlay of what you're having to put in did not make any sense.
It didn't. Right. No. So it was hard getting people to put to sell us their cars.
Actually give us the time to get the information on the phone. Because the first thing before you buy a car, you need the information, you need the service history, you need to know how many owners, what the reg is. I remember how hard it was just to get the registration out of them. They'd be like, no, I don't know who the hell you are. I've never heard of your company. Why am I giving you the reg?
Some dodgy guy.
Yeah, like
you're going to take my reg. And
exactly, clone it and put it on another car.
Yeah, bloody hell.
So even just something as simple as getting the reg was a hard task. But do you know what? It was fun. One thing I always loved was a challenge, and it was something that I personally always took home with me. I never saw it as a job. I always thought I loved cars. So I would make the phone calls at home. Auto Trader was literally my most visited website. I won't say what my other one was.
Second most visited website.
Honestly, like, it'll be at midnight, you find a car and straight away give them a phone call, because I used to remember looking at a car, 2 hours later it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
Like, that was the way, before marketing and everything, that was the way everyone was buying cars. And you'd heard of the other big boys in the industry who were like, oh no, I've just got an offer from him, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And having to fight against them to win the cars was a hard task itself. So
oh man, I've got so many scenarios where actually just thinking about it makes me so upset. But we used to agree a deal. There was a 458, and I remember vividly, right? The guys agreed the money with me, everything. I've spent like an hour and a half going up to him. I've looked over the car. I'm like, yes, I'm going to get it. I'm going to buy it. We've shaken hands. I'm like, give me the bank details. I need to see the V5. Give me the bank details. I'm going to transfer everything, and we're all good. He's like, look, the V5 is at my apartment. So let me go and get it from my apartment, and I'm going to send you over my bank details and then just sort it out. So literally 30 minutes down the road, I get a call from him. Yeah, do you know what? Somebody's put in a bigger offer. Sorry, mate, I'm not selling it to you anymore.
Oh my God.
And just that feeling of losing, you've spent your whole day, probably even a few days before that as well, getting the money ready, and then suddenly you get told, and after a handshake. So there's a lot of that, right? Obviously, like, from a business perspective, we agreed to buy a car, we need to stand on that.
Yeah, but it still happens today. Customers still do the same thing. They say, yeah, no worries at all. That sounds good. I'm happy with the figures. Come pick up the car. And then you're like, yeah, no worries. I'll arrange a transport. We go to their house. We're there to pick up the car. And then they just go, no, I've changed my mind. So we've outlaid money into transport, going to these people's houses, picking up their cars, and then they just haven't had the courtesy to give us a call and say, look, I've actually changed my mind. I don't want to give you the car.
Oh my God.
And then it's like, so it still happens today,
They do get hit with a big fine though, just so.
That's a minority.
Exactly. And then they'll have to pay for the transport.
But that's what makes this industry tougher than the regular sports cars or regular cars is, the people selling their cars have got an emotional attachment to it, right? So it's hard for them to let go of that car in the first place. And B, it is a competitive market. There isn't that many people doing it at this level, and everyone's fighting for the same stock. So it is that goes back to how hard and difficult this and challenging this industry is.
You always hear about buyer's remorse, but there's a lot of seller's remorse with these cars.
There you go. Yeah, 100%.
You speak to someone like, yep, I'm not using the car. Come and pick it up. Buy it, take it. No worries. You go the next day. You know what? Actually, I can't get rid of a Ferrari. What am I doing? I love this car. Look at it. It's beautiful. It's stunning. It's Italian. It's in my garage. It's red. It's, I've worked all my life to buy this car. I'm not going to sell this,
I need to say about one of my mates is 765. So George done the deal with him. And like, this is one of my really good mates, right? So George has done the deal with him. And then subsequently me and him have gone on holiday with our families. And
in advance, I did say I'm sorry about this. That ruined your guys' holiday.
Oh my God. We were having an argument on holiday because he turned around and said, yeah, listen, I just can't let go of the car. I love it too much, right? I'm like, are you joking? The guy's coming to collect it today and you're telling me that you don't want to sell it anymore.
The car's in the showroom. It's being done.
Everything was ready. The guy sent the money. Oh my God.
I think I know the dude you're talking about.
And then eventually he gave in and said, all right, fine. Then just to let you know, you've made me sell the best car I've ever driven. I can't believe it. We got him the most amount of money.
Even right now, there's no way anyone would be able to achieve even 20 grand close to what we got back to him.
Yeah.
So
my friend knows who he is. Yeah, better be bloody thankful. But anyway, so again, back to the early days. It was hard to buy cars because people were like, and we even had one well-known dealer pick up the phone to us and say, "Who the fuck are GVE anyway?" Right? Because he wanted to buy our Aventador for 230 and we had it up for 255, and he's like, "Listen, obviously you're going to sell it to me because you can't sell it yourselves, right?" And we didn't sell it to him. And
we did sell it ourselves.
But the point was that we found it really hard in the early days. But then slowly we started building up traction.
Yep.
we started going to car events. We started getting our name out there a little bit more. We had Ferrari Owners Club come down.
Yeah. The events really paid off, and then word of mouth as well. So when you actually conclude on some deals and you buy cars and the payment was swift, it was quick, then they start speaking to their friends. I remember one time this one guy came down. I won't say his name, but he came to pick up he actually came in to buy an SLS, and then he ended up buying a GT3 RS instead. And then came down with a bunch of his friends. So he bought this brand new GT3 RS at the time. He was doing donuts in the back car park as he drove away.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. Oh,
and then his best mate comes after and says he wants to sell his car. And it's almost like it links from one thing to another person. Word of mouth is such an amazing tool in this industry, I find, because people trust their friends. If you think about it, you're going to spend £250,000 to £500,000 on a car. You want to trust and you want to see evidence that someone else has bought and they've actually, this company has delivered. So word of mouth really helped.
But that applies to any business, right? Or it could even be a restaurant. You're much more likely to go to a restaurant that your mates have said, listen, you need to go to this place, right? The food's so good. And it applies in this as well. You trust your friends that have had that experience, right? And especially in an industry like this where people get screwed over so much, right? In terms of like, man, I bought a car from this place and, you know, it was so messed up and this, that and the other. And when I called up and I asked them to sort it out for me, they didn't. Now, unfortunately, the supercar game is such that no matter what you do with these cars, and you could do 1,001 point check, right?
Yeah.
But it could drive down the road and something could suddenly go wrong, right?
Yeah. It's a mechanical item. It happens with anything.
What, tens of thousands of moving parts, this, that and the other, right? Maybe not tens of thousands, but thousands of moving parts. And then suddenly something goes wrong. It's not the fact that it's gone wrong, it's how you react to it going wrong, right? And this has been the hardest thing. So, look, and it actually leads on to the next point quite nicely, because what we started realizing at Unit 9, where we had the smaller showroom, was that we had this Ferrari. We've just bought a Ferrari F430 into stock, and it's perfect. And then suddenly the engine light comes on. We had 15 grand in it, and then suddenly we have to send it to Ferrari. And then Ferrari turn around and say, well, that's £7,500, please. Right? And we take their word as gospel. We think everything that they're saying is correct. And we're just like, we're none the wiser at that point, right? So then, one evening, we're walking out of Unit 9 and we're walking around here. And it was the purchaser, right, Angus, that said, oh, look, have you ever looked inside Unit 15? And I was like, no. He's like, bloody hell, that would make an amazing showroom. Wait, was it him or was it you?
It was him.
Yeah, it was him.
Either him or Julian.
Julian, yeah. No, it definitely wasn't him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because so our purchaser at that point said, wouldn't it be amazing having a showroom down here? And I looked inside, and then for the next week I couldn't get to sleep, right? Because that seed started growing. And I was like, well, we've got this problem with servicing, so surely it makes sense we get this unit and then we put a service center in there so that all the cars that we're going to sell can get fixed, so we don't have to keep on selling it, so sending it to Ferrari and whatnot. And that's how this unit came about, right? But that sales director at that point, sales manager at that point, turned around and said, when we agreed to come into this place, he turned around and said, listen, David, you're supposed to go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You going from Unit 9 to Unit 15 is like you jumping from step 1 to step 4.
That's exactly how you do it, kids.
Yeah.
That's exactly how
and
you do it.
He said something along the lines of, I think, I think you're moving too fast. So unfortunately, I can't do it. Right? And in steps George, man of the hour, right?
I was banging on your door for ages to get into sales.
Yes, you were. And I was like, I was like, look, 1 second. We've got this guy, right, who's managed a Ferrari showroom at that point prior to working with us, right? And you'd been watching him, not in a weird way, but in a good way. You'd been watching.
I used to sit opposite him.
Yeah.
But Yeah.
And you studied him.
Yeah.
And it was the right time. Like, you'd studied him enough. And at that point, when he resigned and then suddenly had to go somewhere or whatever, I was abroad, and you turn around and say, Dave, there's a customer downstairs. What do I do? Like, Julian's not here, and I'm the purchaser. What should I do? Should I go downstairs and try and sell to this guy? Right? And I said, all right, fine, sod it, go on.
I still remember
and
that
the rest
sale.
is history,
My
right?
first sale, it was, she was actually a soap actress and came in to see a 997 Gen 2 C2S. And they were sat downstairs, the whole family, they saw the car, went around it, looked around it. They talked about figures and so on, went through finance figures. And I knew how to use all of this because I've heard how he used to do it. Turned around, they didn't like the rates. She paid for the car in full and drove it away there and then.
Wow.
And I promise you now, I've never had a sale that easy till this date.
No way.
Yeah, it was genuinely like it was made to happen. And
there you go.
I think it's quite funny actually. I remember the sales manager at the time said, he's like, they're not all going to be that easy. And that's always stuck in my head. Since then, that always stuck in my head, saying, expect the worst. Every time, expect the worst.
Well, you know why he said that they're not going to be that easy, right?
Yeah, because
he's
people don't want to get shown up.
Yeah, well, there you go, right?
Yeah.
His protege is just suddenly taken over.
Yeah.
The student becomes the master. But no, I think it's quite interesting to see how it developed since then. What was your first ever car sale? So obviously, like, you two have different stories, right? So you've been working in Aston, and you were working in Porsche
And Mercedes before that as well.
and Mercedes before that. So what is the difference that you find in working in a independent dealership like GVE versus franchised?
Well, I started from the ranks, right? So I don't want to bore everyone with my stories, but my first job in a car dealership is when I was 15.
Really?
And
That young?
That's all I've ever done. From 15 to now is cars. I think in between I worked in a call center for 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
But, while I was at university. But before uni, I was working in a car dealership in Park Royal, just down the road, family run place. I'm still friends with them. I still know them quite well. And I used to help around whenever I can. So cleaning cars, getting cars ready for sale. They're still going on now, actually. They're still doing really well, and they've gone to another dealership, so well done to them. And I remember my first sales was I was getting a car cleaned, and I wasn't nothing to do with sales. The son was, and I was just there to get the cars ready. And in comes someone that walked in, similar to your one and your situation. And they said, yeah, I'm interested in this car. I couldn't find the son anywhere. He wasn't nowhere to be seen. So I thought, and the father was in the office on the phone. So I thought, let me do it. And I've always wanted to be into sales. And sold them. I think it was a Vauxhall Corsa, like a 1999. I think it was 1,500 quid's worth. And in like it's meant to be red, and it looked pink after a lot of sun damage. But yeah, that was my first sale. And I'll never forget it. And after I'd done that sale, I was actually promoted. So they got someone else to come and prep the cars. And I was on the floor helping them sell. So I was there for a few years. Then I moved to Car Giant. Yeah. After that, I worked in Car Giant for 3 years. And that was... Sorry,
not to, but when you went into the car trade, why? Why did you choose cars?
Because I always loved cars. I always loved, I always loved, just like you, love cars. I was always on, I don't know if there was Auto Trader back then. It was probably the Auto Trader magazine.
I don't think you're that old, mate.
Well, no, when I was 15, yeah, that was a good 17 years ago now. Yeah, I look younger. I look young, but I'm definitely older than I look.
No, but as far as supercars go, then.
So my first supercar place was Aston. So I went from Car Giant, and again, I used to look up to supercars, and I've always wanted to get into supercar sales, especially working at Car Giant. Sorry, and I applied for a job at Aston Martin. And 3 months later, I haven't heard anything back. 3 months later, I got an email, said, yeah, come in for an interview, blah, blah, blah. The rest was history. And blagged my way through, completely blagged my way through.
Just like in the interview down here.
Just like the interview down here, and I'm still blagging my way through everything I'm doing right now. But it works, right? And and my first sale at Aston, it was a V8 Vantage, was a used £45,000 V8 Vantage, and I'd done it on my first day working
No
there.
way.
And I remember on my first month, I'd sold more cars than anyone else that month as well. And ever since then, I was pretty much top in that dealership. But I just love it. I love the...
How is it different? Like, because I've always thought that working at a main dealer is a lot, I won't say easier, right? But I'd say it's, how would you put it?
Well, you've got the trust, right? When
the trust is already there.
from the customer, because they've seen the badge. I'm buying a car from Aston Martin, or I'm buying a car from...
They've seen the badge.
They've seen the badge. But so this is my first non-franchise job I've had here, right? And what I love about working here versus at a franchise dealer is the amount of brands, the multi-brandness of the place. So working at Aston, what we're meant to do in every Aston Martin dealership is buy an Aston. Don't look at Ferraris, don't look at Lamborghinis. And most customers come in and they've already got Lamborghini and Ferrari in mind, but let me see what Aston's about. And you're meant to try and convince them. So in a way, you're trying to lure them into your brand.
Yeah, so there's biasness there, right?
Massive biasness. Whereas here is whatever you want. You know, anything you're interested in, we can supply you with. Yeah. We're not biased. We're not trying to shoehorn you into anything. It's whatever suits you and suits your needs. Yeah. And my job isn't really to sell anything. My job is to educate the customer on the market and get him into something that's going to suit his needs the best. Yeah. And that's the biggest change between working at a main dealer and working here.
Right. Yeah, at an independent. So how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar in terms of that. Like, yeah, you have to you forced yourself to kind of push someone into a Porsche or a Mercedes, you know, whereas here, you know, the same thing, you know, we got all the brands, so it's good to, you know, divulge in everything. And you can, like we see it all the time with our showroom, people walk in and they say they've come in, maybe they've seen a Ferrari on the website, and then, you know, they've met Anthony, and Anthony's gone, what about this McLaren? And then they've bought a McLaren. You know, that's just the benefit of working at a you know, independent dealer compared to a main dealer. You know,
and so with the main dealer, you used to be a salesperson there, right?
Well, I did. Well, interesting. When I first started at Mercedes, I was actually in logistics. You know, so I was. And
you didn't say that in your interview.
Yeah,
I didn't. Yeah, I know. I wasn't.
Oh my God! 1 second. HR. I need to speak to HR.
He obviously wasn't any good at logistics.
Well, that's the reason. This is the point. I wasn't any good at logistics, but I knew every single thing about the Mercedes, every single car, every single like option code, every single option. And the sales manager goes, do you want to come in on a Saturday? Just come in on a Saturday and do some sales. And on that first Saturday, I sold 3 cars. Wow. And then he's like, okay, so now you're stopping logistics and now you're going straight into sales. So that's kind of what it was. I had like the first sale that I did, I just had these deal bars. I'm like, oh my God, this is like taking a drug. It was amazing. I'm like, I want to take more of it, you know? Yeah. So I'm like, and I just kept going, and I just, did 3 in the same day. So yeah, and that was exactly the same. I was just like, okay, well, maybe I wasn't logistics, I was more into sales, and then it went that way. So,
and then when you went to Porsche, like what was the first ever Porsche that you sold?
The first ever Porsche that I sold, yeah. I mean, it wasn't anything special. It was only like a Boxster S that we had on the floor, but you know, it was a car that was there for a long time. You know, the same thing. Well, you know, it was in Mayfair, central London. Someone just walked in, and then they just go, look, you know, I love this sort of
like I'm not,
you know,
you know, belittling it or anything like that, but imagine being in the center of Mayfair, right?
Yeah. There was a lot of walk-in traffic.
Surely it's just walk-in.
Yeah.
And surely it's like,
but you get a
lot
of. The problem is as well, you get a lot of walk-ins, but you also get a lot of tourists.
Oh, do you? Okay,
so this is the problem that we had. You know, we had a lot of walk-ins, which is great, but it's can I have a brochure? Can I? You know, so you have to, you know, sift out all of these, you know, tourists and people that have just come in.
There was no control
London.
with people coming in.
Well, that's the thing. Like you didn't really have much control. Yeah, you know, like the receptionist would kind of try and filter out. Yeah, exactly. And then they'll call us down, but then you kind of have to. It's quite a funny story though. Like at main dealer, the differences from main dealer and independent is that if, say, for example, someone came in and asked for a specific car, and the second they said, oh, I'm thinking about exporting the car, we would have to completely stop the conversation. Yeah. And then you'd see people backtracking. Actually, the previous exporter that used to work here came into Porsche Mayfair when I was working there.
No way.
And I do remember him, and he asked about if we can buy some GT3 RS. Yeah. And I said to him, what do you want to do with the car? And he's like, oh, I'm thinking potentially exporting. And I said, sorry, mate, but unfortunately the conversation has to end here, because they drilled us about export, you know, and they said, no, we cannot export, you know, so it's...
I mean, that's a rookie error.
Yeah, you know, exporting this GT3 RS.
Exactly.
You get asked about export. What does that even mean?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the difference, really, you know, like we were drilled about the whole, you know, if someone says anything about taking the car out, you'd have to just shut the conversation down.
Surely there's some people in the main dealer though. So let's say, for example, at Porsche, some people who would turn around and be like, yeah, could do a car, but just don't mention this, don't mention that. And you could export this, do whatever you want. But
yeah, I mean, some people probably would have played the game, absolutely, you know, but then the problem is that they did play the game and then they got found out, like down the track.
Yeah.
The car's 6 months down the track, the car was sawn and they got notification the vehicle had been exported. And that wasn't a very good conversation to have with that salesperson. So
how
I've played the game a few times.
Yeah.
So I've had customers come in and say, not export, so to speak, but at Aston, you couldn't order a left-hand drive car for the UK market unless you had a really good reason. Yeah. So it was my job to write an email to headquarters saying, we need to order a left-hand drive car for this customer for this, that, and reason. So I've done it a few times and I've pushed it through, and it was fine. And we've done it for good clients, but they weren't necessarily exporting the cars. They wanted to use their cars for 6 months of the year abroad and 6 months of the year in the UK.
That's the story I used to give as well.
Yeah. And I still give that same story. But again, it goes back to our second podcast episode where it's all down to the people working behind that desk at the time. They control what can and can't be done. And it's, very interesting. But there was always ways around it. Always ways around it.
What's the number one DM you're getting at the moment since the main dealer market has been slowing?
Benz dealers offering G63s.
No.
Yeah. Honestly, we put some posts
This
up and
is
it's
nuts. Damn.
Do you know the G63 market slowed down because duties have lifted up abroad and they probably sat on a ton of G400s and G63s. And we had a UK client looking for a G63. Is actually a wife of a footballer, and put a story up saying looking for a G63. And I think in the space of 2 days had 4 different Mercedes-Benz dealers contact.
Yeah.
And so we've got this here, got this brand new one here. We can do it, but just can't put it in the GVE London name. Can find anyone else. You can do it.
Because of me, probably.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. But no, that's nuts. It's crazy to think that how much over they were going for before, and now, you know, they're starting to get rid of them. But actually, when we go back to the exporting days of the business, that market, when you were asking me, how were you able to get 10 cars out of Merck? Well, that was the market when, we'd just come out of this financial crisis. The UK market was rubbish. Lots of people weren't buying. So these dealers were kind of like, all right, don't export it yet, don't export it. And then it's just like, you know what I'm doing, man. You know what I'm doing. I'm buying 20 cars off you every month, or 15 cars off you in a month, or something like that. Surely you know. But anyway, so moving on from you getting into sales at the start, and then us getting Unit 15, and then putting the service centre in, putting the detailing centre in, and, you know, trying to... Each time it's been an iterative process, right? So each time we realized, 1 second, the car's all scratched up. How is it? Surely we should operate this business like the customer needs to come in and not have a reason to say, no, do you know what? I'm going to give me $5,000 off because I've seen this, right?
Yeah.
So then came the detailing center.
Yeah.
Right. So the service center, detailing center, then the customer would be like, I love that yellow McLaren, but I don't love yellow and I love red. And then would be trying to outsource wrapping to X, Y, and Z, and thinking like, oh my God, that they're charging me X amount. Why don't we just bring this in-house? Hence why we bought wrapping in-house. Same goes for PPF, same goes for X, Y, and Z, right? So
and then PPF was actually the one for Body Shop. It was like, okay, I want to protect my car, but I've got stone chips there.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are we sending it to that body shop over there when we can put one over here?
Exactly. And so, precisely right. Then we had a body shop because we were having to send cars out for spray, and, you know, it was a nightmare working with other people's timelines. Like, yes, we can get this car sold tomorrow, but we have to wait for 3 weeks for it to get sprayed. So that's why we bought the body shop in. So now we've got this complete showroom where we've got all these different departments. It gets to a stage where we say, well, we've got the most complete showroom in the whole country. So surely everything should be easy and it should be a walk in the park, right? Surely.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing in the world.
So then that's the end
So
of the podcast,
easy.
guys. And,
No, do you know what? It's I think Anthony touched on this at the beginning. It's hard, but it's super rewarding. So I think you face these daily challenges, and I think that's what wakes you up in the morning. You're almost thinking, I've got to do this, I've got to get that car out, but I've got to buy that car and make sure it's ready in order for it to go out tomorrow. This would all be impossible. Like, to be selling, I think at the peak of it, 60 to 70 cars a month is impossible without having everything in-house. So what's been amazing actually is to see how the team culture over here at GVE is kind of built up. And as an example, this was the last podcast about Goodwood, when we got 4 cars prepared in the space of 1 week.
unbelievable.
And it is like, who else can do that in the country?
It's crazy.
Okay, so
Honestly.
just for context, right? We've got 4 cars, a Cullinan, a Performante, a brand new Range Rover, and a Lamborghini Urus. We've gone into a partnership with 1016 Industries from the US, and we have to get the cars ready for Goodwood. So we have to get 4 body kits on. The only time that we could start these body kits was 7 days before. Bear in mind, 1016 have told us it takes 3 weeks for one of their counterparts in LA to do the exact same thing. And we've done 4 cars in 1 week. Just shows how strong the team is.
I think we need a round of applause for that one. Honestly.
There you go. Well, I'd say at one point we had probably like 15 people doing different tasks around these cars, right?
Everyone was involved. Servicing got involved, body shop got involved, customs got involved with wrapping, detailing got involved with prepping it.
But there you go.
It was
And
almost
even
like
to the
such a
extent
warm
that
feeling.
admin had to get involved in getting the body kits out of customs and this, that, and the other, right? So
Yeah.
And that again is the difference going back to main dealer and independent. At main dealer, all the departments worked against each other.
Oh, really?
I was always headbutting with accounts, with servicing, with sales, and everyone was butting heads because they were looking out for themselves. Whereas coming here is such a breath of fresh air. Everyone works together to make sure the end goal happens, and that's the biggest thing, because I've worked at a few main dealers, and that's the biggest thing for me is the way the work ethic and the way everyone works together, and there's a bit of a family sort of feel to it all. Yeah. And so no, definitely well done for
it is amazing. We've got such a great team that do come together when the time is needed. So I think to recap, right, the subject of the podcast was how to start a supercar showroom, and we've seen. So I mean, many people might think, "Oh, GVE is just overnight," and where the hell did these guys come from? Yeah. That kind of thing, right? When it's not that in the slightest, right? It has been a hard slog.
This is such a quick overview, because you were just saying we opened up PPF, we opened up detailing. It wasn't that simple.
Yeah,
so
oh my God. Yeah.
Detailing opened up in the showroom with no bays, no dust control.
Yeah.
And it was almost like learning as every day goes by. Yeah. So there's polishing cars in the middle of the showroom while there's all the other showroom cars getting dust.
Yeah.
Trying to install PPF in that area, and it was like learning every single day. So from going from that then to putting detailing into another showroom, servicing, understanding what sort of techs work.
But I'd say I'd go as far as saying our servicing departments worked on a bigger variety of supercars than any servicing centre in the UK. So don't get me wrong, McLaren is the best at servicing McLarens, and Lambo.
No, I don't know about that. We've
seen some funny things.
Yeah, I was just about to say that there's been main dealers, their technicians, who just use everything off this diagnostic machines, where everything you get told what's wrong with the car by a computer, and then they send the car back and it's still got the same fault.
Oh.
Whereas I have to shout out Bruce there.
Yeah,
Bruce will save the day. Got a car going out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Needs to have this sorted. Just get it done. He would stay until midnight making sure the car's sorted.
And it's because he uses his brain.
Exactly. He won't use a computer. He'll look at it and be like, "This is what needs to be done. Let's go back to the old school way without having to look at a computer and just actually go down to the bottom of the problem." And this comes down to our technicians and how they were hired. That we've had main dealer technicians come in, Ferrari technicians, McLaren technicians, Aston Martin technicians, and they don't work because they only know how it's done at main dealer. Whereas the likes of Bruce and the guys out here, Ozzy, Luke and Jack, they're all amazing because they know how to work on different cars.
That's hard to get that experience, right? How many
doing crazy stuff there in the background?
how many
The point
Showing his
is,
passion for Bruce.
Okay. No, of course. Look, I think Bruce has saved the day countless times. There'd be no way that this business would be running as it is today without Bruce and the servicing team. But back to what I was saying, this is not an overnight thing. And by no means is a supercar at showroom very easy to open and just suddenly start running. And that was we had to learn the hard way, the really hard way.
Yeah.
And just like you said, every day we learn, damn, we're spending too much money on this, so we need to do something else. Or we've made this mistake, so we need to do this, right? And this is a process of 10 years now in the supercar game, maybe 11 years. And prior to that, 3 years in export. To get us to this point, I'd say, we've only touched the surface of everything.
It's a long way to go.
There's one thing that I wanted to end on, which is why I don't sell supercars anymore. Do you guys know why it is?
You're not good at it.
I know the story, but it's funnier if you say it.
Yeah, so basically, in 2012, when we first opened the small showroom, in that showroom, we only had 5 employees, right, at that time. So it was small little setup. And we stuck in 10 cars into this showroom. And right in the corner was this Audi R8. And so I get a call from a guy. He sounded like an older gentleman, and he said, listen, I'm coming in the next hour, and I want to see this car. Now, at this point, I've said to him, that's fine, sir. If you want to leave a deposit, I can get the car ready for you, and you can take it for a test drive. He said, no. I'm going to come and see it, and then we'll decide, and da-da-da. But he decides to come at 6:30. So he leaves it until everybody's left, and it's just me. And there's 9 cars in front of this one car. And so he comes, I show him around the car, and he says, okay, now I'd like a test drive. I said 2 things. A, you'd need to leave a deposit. And B, I don't have any more staff down here, so it's going to be impossible for me to take the 9 cars out. And his response is, this is absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe it. No, I've come all this way, and you're just going to tell me to, go away without having a test drive. Are you mad? You think that I'm going to buy it like this? I said, look, honestly, sir, I told you this, that, and the other. And so, he was really giving it to me. And then I said, look, I'm sorry, I'm not going to continue this conversation anymore, but,
Get out of my
time. No, it's not EastEnders, mate. But anyway, he says something like, "You little twerp," right? Or you little moron, or something like that. And I said, "What did you just say to me?" Right? Get out. Okay, get out. Go away. Right? And so he goes off in a strop, and I think he swears before he gets into his car, and I'm running after him, and I was like, I must have said a couple of things because it just pissed me off so much. Anyway, so after chasing this guy out, and he goes, and he was an older gentleman as well, he's like 65 years old at that point. I think nothing of it, but at that point I'm just like, I am done with sales, right? Because when you're running the business, from the expenses and this, that, and the other, salaries and da-da-da, you start thinking, I can't concentrate on both sales and that, right? And, but literally 3 months later, he comes back in. And I think does he come and see you, or does he come and see me?
At the time it was Julian, yeah.
It was Julian. And he said to Julian, listen, I'm going to buy this car, but I don't think your boss likes me very much. And then I saw him downstairs. I was like, okay, should we make amends? I just shook his hand, and he bought 5 more cars off me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
It wasn't a bad ending.
He's still a really
to the
good
story.
customer till today.
Still to today, that's it. Okay, so there you have it, guys. That is the end of this podcast. How to start a supercar showroom. Sorry if you guys thought that the conclusion to this will be that it's really easy, everybody can do it. It's not that easy. It's a hard slog. It takes a long time. It's an iterative process. But where there's a will, there's a way. So never give up if you do try. And if you need any advice, George is your man. He's going to tell you everything. But if you like this episode, please make sure you like, subscribe and share. And also switch on that notification bell. And, you know, at the end of the day, this is the early stages of this podcast. We want to keep on making them better for you as each podcast goes along. Keep on getting those good guests for you as well. So thank you, guys. See you later.